I want to give a big shout out to our sponsors, Paragon Honda in Queens, New York. If you're on the East Coast and you're looking for a great deal, go see Paragon, ask for Brian Spenstock, tell them I sent you. They're going to treat you like family.
You ready? Ready when you walk.
Nick Huzar.
No, Huzar.
Nick, he's like not. What a good intro, Nick Huzar. For those who don't know, Nick Huzar is the founder of OfferUp. I'm pretty sure you should be the CEO too, right?
Yep, but there's someone new running it. He's awesome.
So, founder and ex-CEO of OfferUp, and we're from Washington?
Yeah, Washington.
Come here, I'm just curious. Can you tell me a little bit about why did you create this company? And by the way, welcome to Newport.
Yeah.
I know this is very odd to be on a podcast on a boat, but we want to do something a little different. So welcome.
It's okay. It's Friday. My sister lives down here. We was get to connect with you, and before I know it, here I am. It's just life is serendipitous. We're on the back of a boat shooting a podcast.
We were just like talking about company stuff, and I was like, "Hey, you want to do this podcast?" He's like, "Sure." So we kind of.
You want to go sit on the boat? Okay.
Are you purposely sitting up that straight to like?
No.
Yes, you are.
I'm not.
Yes,
I'm not going to slouch.
He's like,
must talk normal.
So, all right. So, tell me about how you come up with the idea of OfferUp.
Okay. I think, I had a room full of stuff. So, a lot of us have junk drawers. I have one of those too. But I had a room full of stuff. My wife says she's pregnant. I'm like, this is awesome. I go into dad mode, try to clear out this room to be my daughter's nursery. And I'm thinking, kill me now, there's got to be a better way. And so I'm looking I reach for my pocket and I'm literally gesturing like, why can't I just take pictures of stuff? So that was literally the spark. I think I just slammed the door, by the way, and didn't end up selling anything because there was no app yet, nothing. And I just felt like, the existing players were too slow, and it took me months to convince myself that, I should actually go do this. But it was a personal pain point I was trying to solve.
So you had the idea right then and there? Or were you like...
I had the idea, but I didn't... there was no pen to paper, right? It's kind of like...
I wonder if this...
germinating. Is it really a problem? Like, why should we exist? Craigslist is out there. There's probably other people doing it. Like, I didn't really take it seriously, probably for at least 4 or 5 months.
When did you go like, fuck that, I'm going to do it?
There's multiple things. One is I played with the apps that were out there. There was a few.
What was it?
I forgot their names. They don't matter. No one uses it. But the thing I always thought was interesting was it actually, and to be clear, my vision has nothing to do with classifieds long term. I want to be the platform for local commerce, full stop. And I think OfferUp has that potential. And so what I started to believe that was exciting was when you look at all the stuff around us, here we are like in this, awesome area around here. Think about the amount of value that's just sitting. It's just not even being used, right? It's sitting in these boats that are next to us. It's sitting in these businesses that are next to us. It's sitting in storage units. It's sitting in houses.
It's like currency everywhere.
My point was, I started to look at this trend of like, if you look at the last 20, 30 years, everyone's moving to urban and suburban areas. That trend's been happening a long time. If you think about where does all the Amazon stuff go? Where's everything going? And what's happening is value is growing in all these areas, all around us. There's probably trillions of dollars.
I'm literally in my house at the time, and I'm like getting rid of stuff, and now I'm like, I can't get rid of enough stuff quicker.
That's right.
I'm not kidding you. I'm like,
well, you have kids now too. So once kids into the equation,
shit everywhere, and I'm like, so I'll go through stuff and I'll give it away, and next week there's like stuff on the floor. I'm like, what is going on?
That's right. Well, welcome to having kids. That's just the nature of it. Like you have your own supply chain you have to manage now, and so what I was convinced of was, wow, if we can remove friction, we can unlock value. And this device enabled us to look at that problem and go, man, we could just take pictures of stuff now.
What year was this?
This is like 2011-ish, probably. There was no Android phone, by the way, at the time.
There was not an Android device.
And so that was always the vision, was if we can unlock value, then we can probably build a really interesting business.
Was FaceTime a thing then in 2011?
FaceTime?
Yeah.
On your phones?
Yeah, did they have FaceTime yet? They didn't, did they?
No.
I remember when that came out, that was crazy.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa.
So that's really the problem I always felt was like, how do we unlock it? We can do that with phones. Another interesting stat's crazy is our homes are 30% larger than the 50s. We're actually having less kids. It's just our homes are basically glorified storage units. So that ring thing is going to kill me, by the way.
Dude, I'm
going to throw it off the deck, off the boat.
So my wife, we just hired a new nanny, right? And it took like 6 years to find one. So every room in my house, I'm not kidding you, has a camera. And when people move from here to here, it's like, ring.
I've been hearing it all day.
It's like, and I'm like, she's, no, you got to leave it on. You gotta leave it open. You're like, you don't know what's gonna happen. I'm like,
it's all good.
What are you talking about? Fucking people walk around the house all day long.
Yeah.
What do you want me to do?
We don't need to know the nanny. Just use the restroom.
Oh, they had a banana. Never mind. False alarm. False alarm. They're eating apples. So I literally have to shut that off. Don't know how to do it, but if you could help me.
You can mute it.
Please, that would just be. It drove you.
You know how to mute?
I feel like it drove you crazy all day. You were like, "Is he gonna keep that thing on all day?" He kept going like he's like, yeah, that's really bad, man. Like,
it's like hanging out with my mom right now.
Yeah.
You ever call when your mom calls and FaceTimes you, and she's like, but it's up on her nose. I'm like, Mom, stop it. And she's like, you're like this looking at her, but meanwhile her camera's up in her nose.
She's like,
yeah. Exactly.
So what are you doing today? I'm like, Mom, just back the phone away.
Yeah. Exactly.
You're getting Sarah Marshall.
Exactly.
So you thought of the idea. Did you go to your wife and go, hey, and what were you doing at the time for work?
I had a previous startup where I was literally living on an air mattress in my office.
Those days are rough, man. I remember those.
Those are rough days. And I had moved on from that company, and I was gonna go I was like, I should probably get a job. I don't want to be a deadbeat dad that has a kid on the way.
Right.
So I had no income. My wife was working at
So you've always been like an entrepreneur.
Oh yeah. I started my first company when I was 22. So this is just who I am. But yeah, so I didn't have I had no income.
Okay. That's fucking scary. I've been there.
Yeah.
I mean, and I always tell people, listen, when it comes to a startup or a company, there's like two modes of like living in. There's like absolute bliss or complete terror.
Yeah.
I've never found there was like this in between.
No.
It's like you're either staring off the abyss or like fucking high-fiving everybody.
The way I draw it for people, I gave this, I was at UW last week, and I was a guest for somebody that was hosting an entrepreneur class, and he was asking, well, how do you think of these trade-offs between having a real job and being an entrepreneur? So look, just draw this curve over your life. If you're lucky, it kind of looks like, you're getting better and better, and it just kind of looks fairly linear. If you draw the entrepreneur one, it looks like this. But ideally, those lines diverge, and if you're really successful, it looks, you're way up into the right in the end. But they're definitely, extreme highs and extreme lows. And I think that's the case. You talk to most big companies, even ones that you would, I know CEOs of companies that are public companies. You ask them along over the years, they felt like they were going to die all the time.
Are you guys public?
No, we're a private company.
And I remember so you get out of this company.
Yeah.
You're like, I got this idea. You go to your wife. Hey, I want to build this thing. And she looks at you crazy. You're like, how?
Yeah. So that was an interesting conversation. So I'm out there, kind of looking for a job, and at this point now, my wife's starting to show, and I'm kind of out there starting to dabble with this idea. When it really became real, like wireframe, my wife was traveling for work to in Paris, and I literally had 9 days. I had no job, and so she's like, "You want to come with me?" I'm like, "Sure." So I had a notepad, a pen, and I rode one of those city bikes all around Paris, and I just explored Paris. But that is where the initial kind of wireframing, the name, and all that transpired, because I had a clean slate. And so a lot of times I'll tell people that I want to go do something or in between jobs, cherish that time, because that's when new ideas emerge, and you're like, oh, you can get after that. And so that's kind of when I started doing that. I didn't tell her yet what I was doing until probably another month, and then I pitched her on the big screen. I came home, like, I got to show you something. And
you put a deck together for her?
I did. That was like 12 slides, and then
for your wife?
Yep. And I'm like 6 slides in. She's like, "This is the best idea you've ever had. You have to go do it." And trust me, my wife's crapped on my idea.
My wife should do everything. She's like, "Yeah, you shouldn't do this."
Yeah, that's a dumb idea.
I swear to God, I'm like, I have this idea. She's like, "Yeah." Here's my thing. The only thing about that though is like, if I'm dreaming and the first thing you want to do is start telling me everything is wrong with it, I'm like, you gotta get away from me for a moment. I'm like, you need to leave me alone.
Yeah, but you need your significant other to ground you.
Not when you're dreaming. Just give me 5 minutes.
Let me dream for a bit. Yeah.
Let me dream and then shit all over.
Yeah, then crap on it. Yeah. So that's kind of. Yeah, so luckily she said yeah, and I said, okay, you know what you're signing up for, because starting any company, especially in the early days, is real rough. And so luckily with her blessing, I didn't even bother talking. It wasn't like I was seriously looking for a job anyhow, but once she said that, I just basically didn't even
So what was your first move? The reason why I'm asking is because a lot of startups have no idea how to go from like idea to creation, for fundraising, deck, all that. They have no idea. And that's actually why I like this podcast, because I think it's really interesting to sit down with people who have been successful. Say, hey, what did you do? Because everybody's like, how do you do it? I'm like, well, it's like,
So with her blessing, so I started. I was already kind of connecting with my one of the people that used to work at my previous company, and I said, look, I think there's something here because of these smartphones. I want to get after it. So I started to kind of bring him on board, and basically for the next year, we sat there and we designed and coded the whole damn thing between the two of us. So we sat there for 7 days a week.
So
I literally had. I looked. I designed it. A lot of it's all my design. I can front end code. I did all the whole website all myself, all the front end, all the design. Same with the apps, all my design. And so like, that's what I was good at. My co-founder was, I think, far more technical. He got it all working and functioning behind the scenes.
So he was like front end or back? He was a back.
He's a back end guy.
Okay.
So between the two of us, we were able to kind of get just a V1 out. But I'm talking 7 days a week. My wife would come home from work. Keep in mind, we already had a daughter and a nanny at this point, and I'm just in the den. Like I look homeless. Like I had a huge beard. I just had my pajamas on, and she's like, have you even showered today? I'm like, leave me alone. And for anyone that's an engineer, you know how it is. When you're coding, you're kind of in the matrix. You don't want anyone bothering you.
I have engineers, and I would literally go to their house, and there'll be fucking trash. Like piles of trash. Like that.
It's because they're in the matrix. They're not in this world. They're in another world.
Bro, I have show you pictures. I'd be like, bro, you look like you live in a dumpster. He's like, I mean, he had like trash.
Yeah.
All around.
Yeah.
Any engineer actually kind of looks like that, by the way. Lots of them look like that.
But that's what they love doing. So I think, I don't know, but that was kind of the full year. The full year, we built a product. It took a full year. There's a lot of talking to people, a lot of just trying to figure out, get feedback. A lot of it was just literally pictures. I think some of the problems I find with people with ideas, like, okay, I'm not going to raise a bunch of money and all that. I'm like, no, you don't. Just go start to draw this stuff out a bit. So the first things we did before we started writing code was we literally mock things up, and I would just put screens on here. I put a flow on here, and I go, look, what do you think through this? And I'd show you, and you go, okay, great. No code. I literally just put the screens there. And so there'd be little things like you can do that with very little effort if you can learn how to design. But a lot of times I think the other thing that is a mistake for people that want to be entrepreneurs is everybody has the idea. But if that's all you got, then you're not going to build a company. You have to know how to go and you got to bring something more than the idea.
Correct.
Yeah.
So you didn't raise money then?
No.
You did it yourself?
Yeah.
So once it was done, did you launch it or raise money before you launched it?
We raised $100,000 of the first money in somewhere in that year. Mostly.
So where'd you go? You just like asked somebody you knew?
I was at like some networking events, so just networking, and I was pitching on like this PowerPoint, and one guy comes up to me. He's like, "Oh, I'll put in some money on this." I'm like, "Okay, I don't know." And then
would you say that guy's the one who started and changed your life? Who's the guy?
I think we changed each other's lives. He's done very well.
I love that. You got him that early, right?
Yeah, I mean, good for him. He took a risk.
What evaluation?
We did it on like a convertible note, so it wasn't valued at that point. He just was taking.
But he made out very.
He did very well, and so like he took a risk when no one else would.
Right.
And good for him. Like,
so, by the way, so those are like early angel investors, right?
Yeah.
For those who don't know, like when you have a great idea and you can, most of the time, what I've always done is I actually don't do what you do. I like UX UI it, design this beautiful thing, put a deck together, then raise money because I go like, here's what it's going to look like, and then I go build it. But what you did is you just went straight to work. Prove the concept, MVP, right?
Yeah.
And then raised $100,000, and then
it was about, okay, how do we get scale? And that was year 2, and that was living hell, because it was.
You only raised $100,000 for a year?
Yeah. Yeah, we would.
Wow,
we sipped on it. Like we would have conversation. By the way, so my co-founder had a kid just like I did, and his wife was starting a restaurant at the same time.
Oh my
God. I thought I was nuts. Like this guy was.
This
good for him.
Because like I can hear your women now like.
Oh.
This is crazy. We got kids. Like what?
I always tell my wife that either it's a big hit and it's wildly successful, or it burns and doesn't work. But there's no middle ground. And I said, so I hope this works, because if these other scenarios, you're going to resent me for a while. And luckily, it's all worked out. But I think, in his scenario, it was nuts too. And we would sip on that $100,000. I'm talking like we'd have conversations like, I need money for groceries. But we were paying ourselves nothing intentionally. And that's the other thing I'd say, is spend very little money in the beginning and treat every dollar like it lasts, because you don't know when that next check's coming. And so that's what we did. That was early days, and trying to get scale was really hard. And trying to get a lot of people to use it. Everyone thought we were nuts. Everyone's like, well, there's Craigslist. Why would I use this?
So what was that defining moment where you're like, holy shit, like this is really, when somebody, who was that investor that came in, you're like, when you got to high five, like, okay, this is gonna work?
So when we we started to get a lot of traction around Seattle, and we only stayed in Seattle. That was the other discipline. There was a few other startups that raised millions of dollars, and they went around the country. And my team's freaking out, and I said, look, they're going to go out of business. And they're like, what are you talking about? And I said, because you don't create a local product and launch it nationwide and get one install in New York and another one in Orange County, another one in Seattle. Like, it's about liquidity. It's about sell-through. So how do you maximize that? So I literally drew a circle around our office. I said, we have to sell. It's like a 30-mile circle. We have to figure it out in the circle. If we don't, we go out of business. And so luckily we figured that out because people were buying and selling.
What did you do? Did you like go door to door and send a bunch of people?
Yeah, I did that. Well, I don't have time for that story. But I ended up launching a girl out of a truck one time doing that.
Launching a girl out?
Yeah, out of the back of a truck.
What do you mean launching a girl?
Okay, I will go there. I'll go. So.
What the fuck do you mean? Because you can't say that and not tell us.
Okay, I'm going to go. So, you do scrappy stuff that doesn't scale when you start a company.
100%. And
so I felt like, man, we tried a lot of tests that were just not working. And I felt like, man, statistically, like 25% of U.S. households can't park in their garage. They have so much stuff. So I'm like, what if I find the densest neighborhood I can find and just blanket it with branding? We'll just put like, helium balloons on their doors that say, buy and sell with your neighbors, and try this new app. So it was January 10th, I remember, because my birthday is January 11th. And we got one of those long haul moving trucks, and helium, by the way, is super expensive. So we end up buying a bunch of these renting these helium tanks, and we put 1,000 helium balloons. You spent one day, filled up the entire truck with these helium balloons that OfferUp branding on it and a little tag.
That super flammable too, like.
Oh yeah, the truck. Oh yeah, it could have been the Hindenburg. So we did that, and then on the 11th, I drove it around this neighborhood, and we had people actually handing out balloons and tying them around, and I'm driving the truck around, and slowly, and when the guy rented me the truck, he goes, hey, if you need to ever put on the parking brake, you pull and you turn. Okay, so we're pausing, we're taking our own little break in the middle of the day, and I stop, and I take my foot off. And all of a sudden, the truck starts rolling backwards, and I go, "Oh crap!" So I run back, I jump back in, and I hit the brake really hard. End up the back of the gate of the truck was open. End up launching a woman out of the back of the truck. I hear screaming, and in my mind, it's like a lot of times they say in like accidents, time slows down. That's how it was. That walk from the front of the cab all the way to the back, I was expecting to see like a decapitated body. Oh. She was on the ground. Everyone's tending to her. And I just thought, oh my God. And so we ended up taking her to the hospital. And I remember that night, that was the only time I had real serious doubts about just calling it, because we didn't have a lot of traction. We had very little capital, and I almost killed someone. And I was at dinner with my wife, because it was my birthday dinner. And I told her what I'd gone through. I was like, I almost killed someone today. So that was a little scrap. And by the way, that test did nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing. It didn't do anything.
So what was it that finally worked for you? Like,
So we got invited to Facebook's mobile beta for advertising. The beta. Before anybody was doing Facebook ads.
So interesting.
So we started playing with it, and at this point we barely had any money. We pitched every venture fund in Seattle, every incubator, Techstars, all that. Nobody would fund us. Everyone thought we were completely nuts. And we just started hitting that circle that we defined with a lot of ads, pretty aggressively. And within 90 days, we just lit up Seattle, right? So we had sell-through, repeat usage. I was wearing OfferUp gear, and I'd go out to coffee and be like, I love that app. I'm like, whoa, holy crap. Like, it's working. We were getting installs for like a dime. So, I think our budget, I said, spend $50 a day, because we had hardly any money. So luckily that was enough to show that we had a product that was actually, it wasn't like blowing the doors off, but we had pretty good traction in one market, Seattle.
Okay. Then what happened?
Okay.
What was the next step after that?
So going back to the real game changer when I thought like, oh, this might really work, was our
Series A. The reason why I'm breaking these down is because I really think startups need to know.
Yeah.
It is not, you don't just all of a sudden become successful overnight.
No.
You suffer.
Yeah.
Little bit of success, suffer some more.
That's right.
A little bit of success.
Yeah. You have to have the stomach for it. I call it the startup stomach, and resilience and sheer belief. Because you look at any data in the beginning, it makes no logical sense.
Yeah.
Like the probability of success and us being where we are rounds to zero. Like it almost rounds to zero. So, but here's the way I think about it. I always say, think about your probability of being born. So I just feel like life continue. It's like what are your odds? 1 out of 300 million or something.
Of being born?
Yeah.
Pretty
Pretty small.
What do you mean?
Well, we're gonna get biological here, but think about how much.
I just want to know that. Okay.
We're talking about sperm here, so think about the probability of you out of all those sperm, and for you to actually, be born. Think about that probability.
Wow,
it's pretty low. But I think you continue on. I think that you continue on in that life, in my belief. You're always the sperm. I always say be the sperm.
Yeah, hashtag. I can already see where this thumbnail's going. Like a big picture of him, OfferUp sign with a giant sperm on his head.
I mean, that's just my view. It's like, hey, yeah, the odds pretty low, true. But if you're persistent long enough and you navigate your way, you're gonna get to the egg. You're gonna make it happen. Anyhow, we're going down a rabbit hole
This
here.
shit is getting left quick. Where's that golden egg moment?
Yeah, so I'd already been flying down the Bay Area quite a bit, trying to connect with folks because I kind of felt like I was tapped out in Seattle, and I sent out like a little infograph after like 60 days, maybe 90 days of kind of our traction, and one of those investors, a number of them were kind of engaged, but one we engaged with was a guy named Josh Berlinger. And he gets on the phone. He said, "Hey, we could put in like $1.5 million and we can close in like 2 weeks." And I'm practically in tears. So I'm begging people for $50,000, $25,000 checks, which is a lot of work, by the way. And so luckily, he came in, and a bunch of that got other people that were kind of around the hoop interested, and we ended up raising $2.8 million in our Series A. And the goal with that was to now show that Seattle wasn't a fluke. Can we go launch down here in LA? Like 30% of the adults in LA use OfferUp every month.
And how many? Let me ask you this, because this happens. How many of those people like that you've had to knock on the door did the fake business thing, like and like never come through? Because that's like a huge thing too.
Oh, I think if you're building a company, you just need to get used to rejection. I mean, you can hear this from Jeff Bezos, how many times people said no to him. And you just have to take it for what it is. Like, okay, maybe they said no. Like, no one knows kind of your business better than you. So I always used to take it with kind of a grain of salt. They tell me no, I'm like, oh, okay, fine. But I've heard it all. I've heard people saying no one's ever going to buy from their phones. I've heard people tell me they don't think this is a big enough business opportunity and they want me to do all this market research. And I said, I'm not going to do it. It's like me trying to quantify the number of stars in space. Exactly. I'm like, that's how huge this opportunity is. And so I said, no, I'm not going to spend the time on it. So I think that what you need to do in the early days is talk to a bunch of people. And if people aren't really that interested, just pass. There's other people out there.
And how much have you raised to date?
$380 million.
Wow. And the company's currently valued at what?
I don't know what the pop. Yeah, you could look at the last comp we had was over $1 billion. The last thing we posted was out there. So
that's incredible. Is there? Let me, as we get ready to wrap it up. First of all, that's just incredible. And by the way, you guys bought Let Go, right? Because they were the only competition out there, really?
Yeah, we came together with them right at the start of COVID. Yep.
So you've gobbled up pretty much everything in the space that really matters, and you kind of are like the king dick of the really, like, you're kind of the king dick of the mountain at this point, really.
Well, I always say there's ways to buy and sell. We have other competitors, but in terms of the largest standalone mobile marketplace, it's definitely us. So
can I guess?
I feel like it's our game to lose.
Just curious how many users you have. Can I just ask? Is that okay?
I'd say half the U.S. is installed OfferUp to date. Over 50 million unique people a year use OfferUp.
That's crazy. How much in revenue? Like, how much have you guys sold in? Just curious.
Transactions. I'd say, since I started the company, we probably had over 300 billion in transactions since we started it.
300 billion in transactions.
Yeah. You name it, we're definitely, I'd say, if you look on the planet, probably one of the top 12, maybe 10 marketplaces in terms of just overall transactions dollars, not revenue, but overall transactions for sure.
I have a question. What is the weirdest thing you ever seen on OfferUp?
Oh, man.
You're like, fucking, this is so weird.
If you can think of it, I've seen it for sure. We do a lot with curation, but when you give people a phone and a camera, you can imagine what they post. We're way better at that now. You won't see a lot of things, but drugs and things like that, that's all gone.
Really?
That won't see it anymore. But we didn't have a lot of curation early on, so it was kind of a free-for-all.
But people have built companies off OfferUp. I mean, I saw the shoe kid who sell like a ridiculous amount of shoes from OfferUp.
Yep.
So they're like literally legit people building businesses off
$1 million companies for sure.
Amazing. Is there what advice, like, as we get ready to wrap it up, what advice would you give to an entrepreneur? Out of everything you've learned, if you had to say one thing, what would that advice be?
I would say, one, it's not for everybody. I think most people shouldn't do it because they don't have, maybe they just don't, they just have the idea. They don't bring anything else to the table, or they're not willing to sacrifice and really get after it. So I think you need to know yourself, and are you willing to go all in and do it? And I just think you also, I have a lot of gratitude to where I am in my life now because I can pick and choose how I want to spend my time. I think had I worked at like a big company, probably not. Like I probably wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah.
Like I'm taking a big trip for 4 months with my family in 3 weeks. We're traveling around the world in backpacks. Like
Facebook offered me like $1 million plus to come run creators, and I was like, no. Because I'm not going to go work at Facebook. I'm good on that.
No.
No offense, Zuck. Love you. Appreciate everything you've done.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to work at it.
So I think you got to know that about yourself. Like, are you okay with that? And that's fine. And that's a lot more predictable. I think the life of starting an entrepreneur is less predictable, but also you really control your time. Like I control every minute of my time now. And I really appreciate being able to do that.
I love that. Thank you so much for coming by, bro.
Yeah.
I appreciate you, man. Nick, this is the man right here. If you don't have OfferUp, go download it in the App Store. It's available on iOS, Android, and I'm pretty sure it's available in every country, isn't it?
Not just the US.
Oh, just kidding. Fuck me. But thanks for tuning in.